what if the exact thing that makes your daily commute so um, mind-numbingly boring, like the bumper-to-bumper gridlock, the endless red lights, the
Yeah.
creeping forward inch by agonizing inch, what if that is also the exact thing that makes it lethal?
Yeah, that is a terrifying thought because it's the boredom that gets you.
Right. I want you to picture that routine frustration for a second. You're boxing out another car. Your foot is just sort of hovering over the brake pedal. You feel entirely safe inside your little metal bubble because, well, everything is moving so slowly.
Exactly. Your brain is lulled into this false sense of security by the slow pace of the cars around you. It completely masks the fact that you are sitting right in the crosshairs of these immense physical forces.
Yeah, one moment you're just annoyed you might be late for dinner, and the next, the world is quite literally tearing itself apart around you.
It creates a catastrophic reality check.
It really does. So welcome to this deep dive. Today we are going through a massive stack of source materials. We're talking Thai news reports, official police statements, and some truly harrowing eyewitness accounts surrounding a massive fatal collision.
Yeah, and this happened right in the heart of Bangkok on May 16th.
Right. And our mission here isn't just to recount the timeline of a tragedy. We want to unpack the mechanisms behind it.
Because we are looking at a perfect storm, really, a mix of physics, urban infrastructure, and human behavior that caused a heavy freight train to absolutely obliterate a city transit bus.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I am naturally just so curious and frankly a bit baffled about how something so massive, so visible could happen in broad daylight in the middle of a bustling metropolis.
It is hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. The sheer scale of this event is wild.
Yeah.
So let's start with the geography and the players involved, just to ground us in the facts before we get into the why.
Well, the setting is crucial here. We are looking at around 3:4 p.m. broad daylight. This is on Asoke Din Dang Road, right near the airport rail link Makkasan Station.
And for anyone unfamiliar with Bangkok's layout, I mean, this isn't some remote, unprotected rural crossing.
Not at all. This is a major, heavily congested artery in the center of the city. Traffic here isn't just heavy, it's practically glacial on a normal afternoon.
Right, which totally sets the stage for the two vehicles. Because on one side, you have this heavy freight train.
Yeah, a massive one.
And reading through the logistics reports here, this isn't like a light passenger train. It's hauling massive shipping containers along a major freight corridor all the way from Chachoengsao to Bangsu. The weight we're talking about is astronomical.
Oh, thousands of tons of steel and cargo, just an unbelievable amount of mass.
And on the other side, you have the bus. This is an orange BMTA Euro 206 bus operating on Route 206.
Right, and BNTA is the state transit authority in Bangkok. So this is a heavily utilized standard piece of public infrastructure, and it was packed with afternoon commuters.
Which makes the setup for the collision terrifying in its simplicity. The bus is stuck in gridlock traffic. But it isn't just idling on a normal patch of asphalt. It is literally straddling the active train tracks.
Yes, stuck right across the rails.
The cars in front of it aren't moving. The cars behind it have boxed it in completely. And then the freight train plows directly into the dead center of this bus, violently dragging it down the tracks and sparking an immediate massive inferno.
It's just devastating.
It is. Let's talk about the physical forces here, though, because people hear train hits bus, and they immediately wonder, well, why did the train just slam on the brakes?
Yeah, and that comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of momentum and friction. A freight train hauling heavy shipping containers is bound by the laws of physics, specifically kinetic energy.
Right.
When a train driver sees an obstacle and throws the system into emergency braking, they are relying on air brakes. That air pressure takes several seconds to propagate all the way down a train that could be, a mile long.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
the back of the train is still just pushing.
Exactly. The cars in the back are still pushing forward with thousands of tons of force, even as the front locomotive is trying to slow down.
It's like trying to stop a massive ocean liner with a bicycle brake. The mass is just too overwhelming.
That's a perfect way to put it. And you have steel wheels on steel tracks, right? The coefficient of friction is incredibly low compared to rubber tires on an asphalt road. You physically cannot stop that kind of mass on a dime, no matter how hard you pull the emergency brake.
But the collision itself only accounts for the crushing damage, right?
Yeah.
Looking at these police reports, the fire was instantaneous.
Yeah.
And explosive.
Yeah, it was immediate.
Two vehicles colliding don't automatically turn into a fireball. So what was the catalyst here?
The catalyst was the specific engineering of that Route 206 bus. It is a Euro 2 model powered by NGV, which stands for natural gas for vehicles. This is a highly pressurized, really volatile energy source.
Wait, if it's an NGV bus, I know standard transit buses often mount those bulky pressurized tanks up on the roof.
They do, yeah.
The logic there is that if there's a leak, the natural gas is lighter than air, so it safely dissipates upward into the atmosphere rather than pooling around the passengers. So were these tanks mounted differently on the Euro 2?
That is the critical factor.
Yeah.
In the BMTA Euro 2 models, those high-pressure gas tanks, and there are 4 of them, are mounted directly underneath the floorboards.
Under the floorboards, wow.
Yeah, they sit in the absolute dead center of the bus's chassis.
Which is the exact precise point where the nose of the heavy freight train made impact.
Exactly. It was essentially a spear hitting a pressurized bomb. You have an unstoppable force slamming into tanks, holding gas at roughly 3,000 psi.
That is insane pressure.
Right. The physical impact instantly breaches those tanks, causing a violent depressurization. And simultaneously, you have the locked steel wheels of the crane grinding against the rails, plus the steel nose of the locomotive crushing into the metal frame of the bus.
Which obviously throws off a huge shower of high-temperature sparks.
Hundreds of them. So in a fraction of a millisecond, you have highly combustible natural gas violently mixing with ambient oxygen, immediately exposed to an ignition source.
So the explosion wasn't a secondary effect of the crash at all.
No, not at all. It was the immediate, inevitable chemical result of that specific mechanical impact.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If we could even use that word for something so horrific.
Yeah, it's grim.
Because the very physics of that central impact, the way that kinetic energy and fire transferred through the bus frame, it created this bizarre, razor-thin margin of survival for the passengers inside.
It really did. The official death toll from the sources stands at 8 people, with 32 people injured. But the fatalities were not distributed evenly at all.
They weren't.
No, they were heavily concentrated in the middle and the rear of the bus, directly above and behind those ruptured NGV tanks where the inferno localized.
So what happened to the people sitting at the front? I mean, if you're near the driver, you're still experiencing the massive kinetic shockwave of a freight train impact.
Right, but the violent physics actually worked in reverse for them. For the passengers sitting at the very front, that initial transfer of kinetic energy was so abrupt and so violent that it essentially turned them into human projectiles.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Several passengers were ejected straight through the front glass windows of the bus, out onto the pavement, before the fireball could even fully consume the cabin.
Being violently thrown through a windshield onto concrete is a brutal trauma. But the sliding doors reality of this is just wild.
It really is.
If they had been wearing seatbelts or if they had braced themselves inside the cabin, they would have been trapped in those flames. The very violence of the impact physically removed them from the deadliest hazard.
It forces you to realize how a split-second choice of where you sit on your afternoon commute dictates your entire fate.
Absolutely.
And that sheer unpredictability extended to the bystanders on the street, too. The eyewitness accounts in these sources paint a picture of absolute chaos. There's a motorcyclist named Jackret who was stuck in the gridlock right next to the tracks.
And he had just bought his motorbike 3 months prior.
Okay. Brand new bike.
And when you're on a motorcycle in Bangkok traffic, you are completely exposed. There's no metal cage protecting you.
None! Jackret and his passenger heard the train horn and realized the train wasn't slowing down. They made a split-second calculation, abandoned the brand new bike, and literally physically dove away.
Just jumped for their lives.
Exactly. And seconds later, the train dragged the burning bulk of the bus directly over his motorcycle, completely crushing it.
Wow. And then you have the account from a driver named Kitty Pong, who goes by On.
Right, the guy in the Audi.
Yeah, he's sitting in his Audi near the front of the traffic line. He reports hearing a deep metallic pung sound. Then, completely unprompted, cars are being violently thrown into his vehicle by the shockwave of the bus being pushed.
Just a chain reaction of heavy vehicles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And rather than ducking for cover, he jumps out into the road. He finds a man whose legs are broken, pins underneath a car, and immediately starts organizing a rescue right there in the middle of a burning intersection.
Which highlights a fascinating psychological phenomenon. During mass trauma events, the primal human flight response often gets overridden.
Yeah, you see this in the account of Upfandy, another witness.
Right.
He heard the horn, saw the collision, and instead of running from the risk of secondary gas explosions, he bypassed all self-preservation instincts and sprinted directly toward the flames to pull people out of the wreckage.
Or Syrian, the tuk-tuk driver. He had a family with young kids in the back of his cab. He saw the train coming, calculated the speed, gunned his engine, and managed to clear the tracks mere seconds before the train crossed his path.
Just incredible. In a moment of deafening terror, these everyday commuters, people just trying to get home or go to work, instantly transformed into first responders.
It speaks to a profound human resilience under pressure. But celebrating that resilience forces us to confront a much darker question.
Yeah.
We have to transition from the immediate chaos of the explosion and ask why all of these people were placed in that deadly situation in the first place.
This is the part of the deep dive that I think is going to deeply frustrate anyone listening. The train was blaring its horn. Witnesses confirmed the crossing bells were ringing. Why didn't the bus drivers simply hit the gas and move off the tracks?
To understand that, we have to examine the infrastructure at play here. Thailand has a massive railway network with 2,639 level crossings across the country.
That is a lot of crossings.
It is. And this specific intersection at Asokadendang wasn't lacking safety equipment. It was manned by an operator in a booth, and it featured a physical boom barrier. Those large gates designed to drop down and block the road when a train approaches.
But the barrier never came down.
No, it didn't.
And reading through these reports, it didn't fail because the motor was broken or the electronics shorted out. It failed because the infamous Asoke traffic was so tightly packed that cars, motorcycles, and this massive Euro 2 bus were literally parked in a solid, unmoving line directly beneath where the barrier is supposed to fall.
Yeah, the operator physically couldn't lower the gate without crushing the vehicle sitting underneath it.
Which brings in the legal context. Thai traffic law, specifically Section 63, explicitly addresses this exact scenario. Vehicles are legally required to stop at least 5 meters away from active train tracks. The city even paints these massive, bright yellow caution boxes on the road surface to give drivers a visual boundary. The rule is simple. You do not enter the yellow box unless the exit on the other side is completely clear.
Exactly.
I have to push back on the infrastructure argument here, though. If you are a driver and traffic is literally a brick wall in front of you and cars have boxed you in from behind, what is a plastic boom gate actually going to accomplish?
That's our point.
If the operator had lowered it, it would just bounce off the roof of the bus. A painted yellow box on the asphalt doesn't stop thousands of tons of steel. This feels like a massive human behavior problem disguised as an infrastructure failure.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are touching on a concept sociologists and systems engineers call the normalization of deviance.
Normalization of deviance. I've heard that term used in aerospace engineering.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the idea that if an organization breaks a safety rule and nobody dies, the human brain starts treating the broken rule as the new standard operating procedure. It's what investigators cited in the Challenger space shuttle disaster.
That is the perfect analogy. It is a gradual desensitization to risk. Commuters at this Bangkok intersection didn't suddenly decide to be reckless on May 16th.
Right.
What happens is, on a Tuesday, a driver feels nervous but stops on the tracks to avoid losing their spot in traffic. No train comes. The brain's threat detection system downregulates the alarm.
Because nothing bad happened.
Right. On Wednesday, they do it again to save a few seconds. Still no train. The police don't write a ticket. The boom operator doesn't yell over a loudspeaker.
So the dangerous behavior becomes entirely normal. It's just how we commute here.
Exactly. The sources even reference viral videos that surfaced on social media before this accident ever occurred. These videos showed a crystal clear daily pattern at this exact Makkasan intersection.
Really? Like people were already filming this?
Yes. You see cars, motorcycles, and city buses routinely parking across the tracks. They are completely ignoring the yellow boxes and the warning bells, treating the active railway as just another patch of asphalt to wait out a red light.
So this tragedy wasn't a freak accident or a sudden fluke. It was a statistical inevitability.
100%.
You have a commuting culture playing Russian roulette on active train tracks every single day. The deviance was completely unpunished until the odds finally caught up with them in the most violent way possible.
When deviance is normalized by an entire population, including the professional transit drivers, I might add, the physical safety infrastructure, no matter how well designed, is rendered entirely useless. A boom gate cannot protect a society that refuses to leave room for it to operate.
Which leads us directly into the messy, complicated aftermath. Because when an entire culture is ignoring the rules, but a crash leaves 8 people dead, the legal system can't just shrug and blame society.
No, human nature demands accountability.
The authorities have to point a finger at someone.
And the investigation reflects that scramble for blame. The police chief stated they are actively investigating three distinct parties to assign legal fault. First, they are pulling the data from the train driver.
Okay.
They are checking the locomotive's speed tape to determine if the train was exceeding the speed limit and analyzing the exact braking distance.
Though, considering the friction and momentum physics we laid out earlier, even if the driver hit the brakes perfectly on time, the track was physically blocked.
Yeah.
It feels like checking a box, but I guess they have to do it.
Yeah, they have to rule it out. Second, investigators are scrutinizing the barrier operator. They are looking into the communication protocols.
Right, like if the tracks were hopelessly gridlocked, did the operator have a direct line to alert the approaching train?
Exactly. Did they attempt to physically clear the traffic? And finally, they are heavily focusing on the bus driver.
Who miraculously survived the ejection, by the way.
Yes, he did.
But the pressure on him is immense because at the end of the day, he was the licensed professional. He made the conscious choice to stop a volatile NGV vehicle full of passengers directly on top of active rails.
True. And in response to the public outcry, the BMTA, the state bus authority, stepped in quickly, pledging 1 million baht in compensation to the family of each deceased victim.
So what does this all mean? We can talk about train speed tapes or communication protocols or a 1 million baht payout, which is roughly 27,000 US dollars, by the way.
Right.
But reading these source materials, the bureaucratic response feels incredibly hollow compared to the human toll. Money doesn't fix the void left behind. There's a story in these reports about a man named Tom, a Myanmar national living in Bangkok.
Oh, that story is heartbreaking.
It really is. His wife takes that exact Route 206 bus every holiday to come see him. After the news of the explosion broke, the sources describe him standing near the police station, desperately calling her cell phone over and over, getting no answer.
Just terrible.
Just waiting in agonizing limbo to find out if the woman he loves is one of the bodies being pulled from that charred chassis.
You have to imagine, the ripple effects of that grief are devastating. There is another account of a young woman, a niece to one of the passengers, who is racked with this unimaginable, suffocating guilt.
Oh, man.
Because she was the one who checked the transit ad. She sent her aunt a text message telling her to hurry up and catch that specific bus at exactly 3:35 p.m.
Just trying to be helpful so her aunt could come visit.
Exactly. And now she has to carry the psychological burden of believing that her mundane text message placed her family member right into the center of an inferno.
Yeah.
1 million baht or firing a bus driver does not even begin to touch that kind of lifelong pain.
He really grounds all the talk of physics and infrastructure right back into human reality.
Yeah. This raises an important question for all of us looking at the aftermath, though. When a society initiates this intense hunt for accountability, does holding one bus driver or one train operator or one guy in a booth legally responsible actually solve the underlying systemic issue?
If the root cause is the normalization of deviance, like if thousands of drivers wake up tomorrow and still think it's acceptable to inch forward onto a railway track because they're running late, then prosecuting one driver is just putting a tiny Band-Aid over a gaping wound.
Right. It doesn't fix the culture.
It fulfills the legal requirement for blame, but it doesn't make the intersection one bit safer.
To synthesize everything we've unpacked from these sources, this was not merely a tragic traffic collision. It was a fatal intersection of immense kinetic energy colliding with highly vulnerable, pressurized NGV tanks on a city bus.
Yeah.
But more deeply, the catalyst for that explosion was a daily commuting culture that had grown entirely too comfortable with ignoring catastrophic risk just to save a few seconds.
It forces a heavy reflection on the value of our own patience. I want you, the listener, to think about this the next time you find yourself stuck in that frustrating, creeping commute we talked about at the start.
We all do it.
We do. Think about how easily we all give in to the urge to inch forward, completely tuning out the massive, unforgiving machines operating around us. We lose our respect for the lethal physics of the road because we're so blinded by the annoyance of a red light.
It is a fundamentally human flaw to prioritize immediate convenience over abstract danger. But as the wreckage on Asoko Din Dang Road proved, when the abstract danger becomes physical reality, the consequences are absolute.
They truly are. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, looking toward the future. If our physical safety infrastructure, the boom gates, the warning bells, the bright yellow caution boxes painted on the asphalt, if all of those engineering solutions are completely neutralized by simple human impatience and the psychology of a traffic jam, how do we design the cities of tomorrow?
It's a huge question.
Do urban planners need to give up on shared spaces entirely and engineer roads that physically remove the human element of choice?
Like automating everything.
Yeah. Or are we looking at a future where we have to build massively expensive, fully grade separated transit networks, everything underground or elevated, just to protect us from our own daily habits?
That might be the only way.
Or is there a way to fundamentally reprogram the human brain and how we view our collective responsibility to each other when we get behind the wheel?
It is the ultimate dilemma of modern urban design. We have to figure out how to engineer around human nature or somehow change it.
A massive challenge for cities everywhere. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Stay curious, stay patient in that traffic, and please stay safe out there.